Cold storage begins with a terrifying discovery hidden beneath years of government secrecy. Decades earlier, during the fall of Skylab in the late 1970s, a strange fungus collected during space research crashes into a remote area of Australia inside a surviving oxygen tank. At first, it seems harmless, but when local workers accidentally expose the organism to heat and oxygen, it mutates into something horrifyingly alive. The fungus spreads through bodies with terrifying speed, controlling nervous systems and forcing infected hosts to violently spread spores before dying in gruesome ways. A secret government bioterror team led by Robert Quinn, played by Liam Neeson, arrives to contain the outbreak. Alongside him are expert operatives Trini Romano and scientist Dr. Hero Martins, who realize the organism is unlike anything humanity has seen before. It adapts quickly, learns from its environment, and cannot simply be killed with normal chemicals. After a brutal containment mission that leaves entire sections of the outback destroyed, the surviving samples are locked deep underground inside a decommissioned military base in Kansas. The government seals the fungus in a temperature-controlled bunker called cold storage, believing it will remain frozen forever. But years later, the base is abandoned and converted into a cheap self-storage facility for ordinary civilians who have no idea what sleeps beneath them. The movie then jumps to the present, introducing Travis "Tea Cake" Meacham, played by Joe Keery, a sarcastic ex-con trying to survive boring night shifts at the facility, and Naomi Williams, portrayed by Georgina Campbell, a veterinary student struggling with money and exhaustion. Neither of them knows that their ordinary night is about to turn into a nightmare capable of ending humanity. As the night shift drags on, strange things begin happening inside the storage complex. Power flickers, animals behave aggressively, and security alarms start triggering in restricted underground areas no employee should even know exist. Tea Cake initially treats everything like a joke, using humor to hide his frustration with life, while Naomi senses something genuinely wrong. The tension builds slowly as the movie mixes dark comedy with creeping horror. They discover maintenance workers missing, walls covered in wet fungal growth, and infected rats fused together into grotesque masses moving like one creature. When an employee named Mike accidentally breaks into the lower sublevel searching for wiring equipment, the fungus attacks him silently, entering his body through cuts and breath. At first he seems normal, but soon his behavior becomes erratic, violent, and deeply disturbing. The fungus doesn't just infect, it manipulates hosts like puppets, turning them into spreading machines obsessed with heat and reproduction. The infection scenes are horrifying because they feel alive and uncontrollable. Veins pulse beneath skin, bones crack unnaturally, and victims burst apart in explosions of spores. Naomi realizes this is not some chemical leak, but a biological nightmare. Around the same time, Quinn is informed that cold storage has been breached after years of silence. Old and physically worn down, but still sharp-minded, he immediately understands the danger. He returns to the facility with Trini Romano, knowing that if the fungus reaches the outside world, civilization could collapse within days. Meanwhile, Tea Cake and Naomi are trapped inside as the organism spreads through ventilation systems and storage corridors, transforming the building into a maze of death. The film creates constant tension by making every hallway dangerous and every sound suspicious. Even harmless objects become terrifying because spores can hide anywhere. What makes the story gripping is how ordinary people are forced into impossible survival decisions while still trying to understand what they are fighting. The middle section of the movie becomes a desperate battle for containment as Quinn finally reaches Tea Cake and Naomi. At first, the younger characters do not trust him because he seems secretive and cold, but Quinn reveals the horrifying truth about the Australian outbreak and explains that the fungus is not simply alive. It is intelligent in a primitive but terrifying way. It reacts to temperature, adapts to attacks, and uses infected organisms strategically. Quinn's plan is brutal but simple. Keep the fungus frozen long enough to destroy the facility before sunrise. But the situation keeps worsening because the underground cooling systems are failing. Every degree of rising heat causes the organism to multiply faster. The film balances horror with surprisingly funny interactions between the exhausted survivors. Tea Cake constantly makes nervous jokes, while Naomi becomes the emotional center of the group, refusing to abandon innocent people trapped inside. One of the most intense sequences happens when they attempt to rescue survivors from a storage. As dawn approaches, the fungus reaches catastrophic levels of growth. Entire underground floors are consumed by massive fungal structures glowing with unnatural heat and movement. The movie becomes increasingly claustrophobic as oxygen systems fail and every surface seems contaminated. Quinn reveals the government placed a hidden failsafe beneath the facility years earlier, a tactical explosive designed to destroy the entire underground complex if containment ever failed. But activating it requires manual access deep inside the infected core. Knowing he may not survive, Quinn prepares to sacrifice himself, but Tea Cake and Naomi refuse to let him face it alone. Together, they descend into the deepest level where the fungus originated, moving through tunnels filled with infected creatures barely recognizable as human. The organism now behaves almost like a giant hive mind, protecting itself intelligently and forcing the survivors into brutal confrontations. One particularly disturbing moment shows infected hosts voluntarily impaling themselves to release more spores into the air, proving the fungus values spreading over survival. Naomi nearly dies after exposure to spores, creating emotional urgency as Tea Cake desperately fights to save her while still helping Quinn reach the failsafe system. The climax becomes a race against time filled with explosions, collapsing tunnels, and horrifying transformations. Quinn finally activates the destruction sequence, but is overwhelmed by infected hosts before escaping. In his final moments, he holds off the spreading mass while Tea Cake drags Naomi toward the surface. The facility erupts in flames and freezing chemicals as the underground bunker collapses, seemingly destroying the organism. But the movie avoids giving complete certainty. As emergency responders arrive, Tea Cake and Naomi sit exhausted outside the ruins, realizing they survived something the world will never know about. Yet, in the final moments, the camera quietly reveals a single, unnoticed fungal spore clinging to a rescue vehicle, hinting that the nightmare may not truly be over. Quinn, hardened by decades of secrecy, becomes the symbol of buried guilt and the consequences of government mistakes. The fungus itself is one of the film's most frightening elements because it feels believable enough to exist. It doesn't speak or act like a traditional monster. It spreads like nature twisted into something hostile and unstoppable. The movie constantly reminds viewers that humanity often creates its own disasters by hiding dangerous truths instead of confronting them honestly. The underground facility becomes a symbol of forgotten mistakes, literally buried beneath everyday life. Even the humor serves a purpose because it makes the characters feel real. They joke because fear becomes unbearable without laughter. The balance between tension and absurdity gives the film a chaotic energy that keeps viewers engaged. Instead of focusing only on jump scares, the story creates dread through atmosphere, isolation, and the feeling that the infection can appear anywhere at any time. By the end, audiences are left both entertained and unsettled, wondering how close humanity really is to disasters hidden beneath its own systems, but the experience changes them permanently. Tea Cake no longer drifts through life carelessly. Surviving the outbreak gives him purpose and emotional maturity he never had before. Naomi continues her studies, but carries trauma from witnessing people transformed into monsters by something invisible and unstoppable. The world moves on, unaware of how close it came to extinction in a single night. Yet the film's final scenes suggest that humanity's greatest danger is not the fungus itself, but arrogance. The belief that dangerous things can be locked away forever without consequence.